Okay, let's dive into this fascinating look at the invisible, psychological trade-offs of using generative AI. We are living through a truly profound technological shift right now. And today, we're going to explore a deeply compelling question. As we hand over more and more of our thinking to machines, what exactly is happening to the human mind?
I want you to picture a typical day. Maybe you're a parent, and you're just trying to digest this massive, completely disorganized email thread from the school's PTA. You know the one, complete with 14 reply-alls about gluten-free snacks. So you just have an AI summarize it into 3 bullet points. Or actually, maybe you're a student, and you feed a dense textbook chapter into a prompt to instantly generate a study guide. In the moment, it feels like magic. It feels like a massive win for your personal productivity. The chore is just gone. But as we peel back the layers in this explainer today, I want you to consider a quiet, kind of unsettling possibility. What if this completely harmless, wonderful convenience is actually costing us way more than we realize? What if by eliminating the chore, we are actually eliminating a core function of our own intellect?
And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the issue. To understand the cost of that magic, we really have to look at how this current technological leap is fundamentally different from anything we've experienced before. Think back to the search engine era. When you Googled something, the search engine basically just provided thousands of documents. It gave you the raw lumber. But you still had to read the sources, evaluate their credibility, synthesize the timeline, and, well, build the house yourself. Cognitive assembly was absolutely required. But today, in the AI era, we are engaging in total cognitive outsourcing. You ask the exact same question, and the AI does the reading, the evaluating, the structuring. It instantly hands you the fully built house. We're no longer just automating the retrieval of information, we are automating the uniquely human act of logical synthesis.
So think about staring at a blank page, trying to write a really difficult email or an essay. It's painful, right? Well, to understand why handing off that cognitive assembly is so dangerous, we have to look at the biology of the brain through something called the friction hypothesis. See, the human brain is a highly metabolic organ. It is incredibly efficient, which means it absolutely will not expend precious energy without a clear biological justification. So when you try to solve a complex problem, and you feel that subjective sense of frustration, confusion, or strain, that mental friction isn't just a barrier to getting your work done. That friction is a biological prerequisite. Wrestling with a complex concept is literally how neural pathways are activated, tested, and permanently forged in your brain.
And this brings us to a really fascinating concept from cognitive psychology known as desirable difficulty. In plain language, this just means there is immense biological value in struggle. Introducing hurdles into your problem-solving process drastically improves your actual mastery of a subject. Think of it like this. Having an AI seamlessly synthesize your thoughts is exactly like hiring someone to go to the gym and lift weights for you. I mean, the work technically gets done, the weight is lifted, the output is achieved, but because you didn't experience the physical resistance, your muscles still atrophy. And your brain operates on the exact same principle. It absolutely needs resistance to grow. Let's move to the next slide and see how this builds, because this gym analogy plays out on a literal neurological level when we compare passive processing to active generation. When you read a perfectly structured AI-generated summary, it feels incredibly easy. That's passive processing. The information flows smoothly into your short-term memory, but because your brain exerted almost zero effort to acquire it, it quickly prunes those weak neural connections. It literally just throws the information away. On the flip side, the frustrating, messy inefficiency of writing something from scratch, that's active generation, forces your brain to search its archives and build lasting semantic links. That physical feeling of strain signals to your brain, hey, this information is vital for survival, we need to reinforce these synapses right now. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful analogy from our source material. Generative AI is the GPS of the mind. Just think about spatial navigation for a second. When you navigate a new city using physical landmarks and a paper map, you build a robust, internalized spatial model. You know how the whole city connects. But when you rely entirely on turn-by-turn GPS, sure, you reach your destination perfectly, but you have no idea how you got there. Your mental map atrophies. By continuously jumping straight to the conclusion with AI, we're accumulating all these isolated artifacts of knowledge, but we entirely fail to develop the underlying structural logic required to pivot or adapt when we suddenly find ourselves lost.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it explains that feeling we've all had. Have you ever read a perfectly formatted AI response and suddenly felt like an absolute genius on the topic? Well, that feeling is a cognitive bias known as the Fluency Heuristic. Simply put, this is the illusion of competence. Because an AI's output is so incredibly articulate, grammatically flawless, and just so easy to read, Our brains falsely conflate the ease of processing that information with the actual mastery of it. We look at the beautiful text on our screen and we subconsciously trick ourselves into believing that we actually possess the deep knowledge required to generate it.
Let's look at how this illusion of competence plays out in the real world. Imagine a junior marketer who uses an AI to generate a comprehensive, frankly brilliant go-to-market strategy. They walk into a boardroom, they present this flawless document, and they feel incredibly competent. But then, right in the middle of the live meeting, the client says, "Actually, the market just shifted this morning. We need to restructure this based on a completely new variable." The marketer freezes. They completely panic. Why? Because they didn't do the granular, messy work of weighing those variables against one another. They have the final document, sure, but they have absolutely no underlying mental map of how the strategy was actually built.
And this phenomenon right here is what experts are calling the ventriloquist effect. When we rely too heavily on the fluency heuristic, we essentially turn ourselves into dummies for an algorithm. We become incredibly adept at mouthing the eloquent, perfectly structured words of a Silicon server, curating brilliant outputs to show to our bosses or our teachers. But underneath that shiny surface, we are completely lacking the deep, internalized intuition required for true crisis management. Without realizing it, we are creating an entire workforce of hollow experts.
And this leads us to a massive, frankly staggering societal implication. Historically, technology creates divides based on access. Think of the digital divide between those who had internet access and those who didn't. But the AI revolution is entirely different. The most powerful AI models in the world are universally accessible for free right now on billions of smartphones. Therefore, the impending intellectual fracture in our society is not going to be defined by who has the technology. The impending cognitive divide will be defined entirely by how they choose to use it.
So, the crucial point is that society is quietly fracturing into two distinct groups. On one side, we have the cognitive outsourcers, and this is going to be the vast majority of people. Seduced by the extreme convenience of AI, they'll use it to bypass thought entirely, ultimately experiencing profound cognitive atrophy and becoming completely reliant on algorithmic consensus. But on the other side, we have a much smaller group, the cognitive artisans. These individuals will realize that unassisted thought is a crucial biological exercise. They will deliberately use intentional friction. They'll write their first drafts manually, they'll maintain robust cognitive maps, and because of this, they will be the only ones capable of lateral, truly original thinking, granting them immense economic and intellectual leverage in the future.
Section 1. Designing Human-AI Symbiosis from Delegation to Interrogation.
So, if passive consumption leads to a hollow mind, what exactly is the way forward? Look, we don't want to just throw our computers out the window. We need a new paradigm. We have to design a human-AI symbiosis where we use these powerful tools not as all-knowing oracles that do the work for us, but as intellectual sparring partners that challenge us to think deeper. Here is a highly practical framework to become a cognitive artisan. Step 1 is reverse prompting. Instead of asking the AI to solve the problem for you, you solve the problem first, and then prompt the AI to critique your logic or find your blind spots. Step 2 is edge case exploration. Keep control of the core creative architecture yourself, and only use AI to test extreme scenarios or crunch vast datasets that physically exceed human memory. And step 3 is friction intentionality. Whether you're leading a company or teaching a class, purposefully restrict AI during the early formative stages of a project. Force the human brain to build the necessary mental map before applying any algorithmic optimization.
As we stand on the edge of this cognitive automation era, it forces us to ask a deeply profound, almost philosophical question. What is the ultimate purpose of human thought? If our only goal is purely capitalistic, just to generate the maximum amount of text, code, or strategy in the absolute minimum amount of time, then yes, completely outsourcing our minds to AI makes perfect sense. But if we recognize that the struggle of thought is intricately tied to our emotional intelligence, our sense of agency, and our capacity for actual groundbreaking innovation, then the math changes entirely.
We really have to remember exactly what we're dealing with here. Generative AI is ultimately a master of the past. It looks at what humans have already done, and it generates the most statistically probable sequence of words. It is the ultimate engine of the expected. But true human progress? Well, that has never been statistically probable. It has always been driven by the unexpected, by intensely frustrating, messy, emotional collisions of contradictory ideas that create wild leaps of logic no algorithm could ever predict.
As we navigate this incredibly exciting but tricky new frontier, our biggest challenge won't actually be building smarter machines. Our biggest challenge will be finding the discipline to keep our own minds sharp in a world that is constantly begging us to stop thinking. So I want to leave you with this final thought. The next time you open up an AI prompt and prepare to type in a request, I I want you to pause and ask yourself honestly. In this moment, are you simply outsourcing a chore, or are you outsourcing your mind?